Hey friends, it is Wednesday and that means it's Ask a Flower Farmer. And before we jump into Ask a Flower Farmer, I thought we'll walk back in the warehouse and see what, if I can get this off the stand, and we're going to take a look at what the girls are up to and what they're packaging, and because it's kind of a never-ending job around here. So I'm just going to let you guys kind of see in the background here. So it's Cammie and Melanie, and Bobo is the folder. Melanie and Cammie are the pullers, and they are, I'm just going to turn y'all around here so you can actually see a little better. They are actually packaging the Bio 360. That is the biodegradable film that we offer, which we've used on our farm for over a decade now. And we package it into 50-foot pieces for other people to be able to use it, right? Because it's, only available in huge bulk. So I just thought I'd give you a little look. This is our warehouse here. And so the film is made out of a corn byproduct, and it is 100% compostable, meaning it totally breaks down. You won't find any pieces of it floating around our farm, which is what my personal fear was when I started using it all those years ago. So this is kind of what it looks like. I'll just let this will finish this one. I'll just stand here and then we'll go inside. So that's kind of one of what our niches is, right? Is that we try to bring those products that I use as a flower farmer or as a farmer to people that, would otherwise not have access to that product. So now Melanie is going to cut it, and then they pop it off of that board and hand it over to Bobo, and she folds it and puts it into a package. And everybody's waving to y'all, guys. And so that is just one of many of those things. And then it gets handed off to Bobo, who is the official, we call it diaper folder. So we'll leave them be. So anyway, they're not all, that doesn't often happen that they're here doing this when I'm here with you guys. So that worked out really well. Anyway, that's just one little peek into behind the scenes of the Gardener's Workshop. And let me just tell you a couple other announcements. And Tucker is crying. He's not even 10 feet away from me, y'all. I have a piece of paper, but I left it in there. So here is the big announcements. First off, on Clubhouse today at 1 o'clock, I am being joined by Jonathan Lease of Springforth Farm. Jonathan and Megan are what we call micro flower farmers, which is what so many people should be, even if we don't know it yet or not. So I'm talking to him about what's in their course, and it is the no-till micro-scale flower farm. And it's really about a lifestyle and the way that they do things, and it'll be an awesome discussion. So please come over and bring your questions, and we'll be talking to Jonathan. And then here's the big news flash. We have eucalyptus seeds, y'all. We got them back in. They just repackaged them, and they put them in the store last night, and we do still have some left. So you'll find eucalyptus silver dollar over on our website if you are still in the need for that. Okay? So, and then Rhonda brought over to me that, Rhonda's the one that really fields a lot of the questions and the phone calls around here. And so she kind of has the vibe. She has her finger on the pulse of what people are doing and going on and the problems they're facing. So she brought me over. This is, y'all, if you're soil blocking and you need the nutrients to make your own recipe at home, this is the nutrient mix. We mix them and make it available because people can't find it. That's the whole point, right? So this is green sand and rock phosphate powder, and you'll find this on our website. And then I'm going to add my 2 cents. This is our blocking mix. This is the ready-made, which you can buy from us ready. You just add water. It's already got the nutrients in it. There's always tons of conversation about blocking mix or soil that you can use for soil blocking. And you can really use any soil, but they don't all perform the same and hold up the same. And I know that because I get questions about that almost every day. And we don't use sterile soil. We use a soil that it's really binding. It's nothing but compost, peat moss, and nutrients is what that is made out of. We have it made. And soil, the blocking mix you use does make a difference in the way they grow, the way they thrive. The green sand that's in the blocking mix, did you know that green sand is part of what helps the mix hold moisture? It can hold a third of its weight in moisture. And so there are reasons for all these different components. And anyway, we just wanted to let everybody know, if you can't find it, we have it ready made, but we also have the nutrients for you to make your own at home. So here's the story. If you would like to ask a question that I can try to do my best to answer, just post it in the bubble down below, and that way I don't have to scroll through all the names to find your question or perhaps miss it. So let's get a move on here. The well-watered garden. Last frost date is April 26. Can I still sow Ami Magus and Nigella? And can I start them in soil blocks indoors? So first off, I want to say that, you never know this kind of stuff until you actually try it and experiment. So I have never been a direct sower in very early spring because the seeds definitely need heat to pop, right? So that's why I'm sure you're asking, can you do it in soil blocks? Sure, you can try it. I have Ami Magus, we definitely start in soil blocks. And here's the secret for Ami Magus, Daucus, and Dill, is we put them on the seedling heat mat for about 24 hours at least. Then we take them off the heat and just set them on a shelf in the grow room. I typically put them low to the floor so that it's cooler. And they don't need light. They just need room light. You don't have to do anything special. Just set them on a shelf. Water them when they dry out. And I will tell you the Ami Magus will just pop like crazy in about 7 to 10 days. I would try that with the Nigella also because they need those cool temperatures. So yes, I would definitely do it. So your planting window is 6 to 8 weeks before April 26, right? March, February. So you're going to be a little late or you're going to be on the tail end of your 6. So yeah, go for it. And y'all, I just can't say to you, write down on that big calendar what it is that you do. So if it's a failure, you don't do it that way next year. Or if it's a success, you do, right? So that's why the big calendar, the big jumbo, is so useful. It's got space for you to write on. Is there a soil mix you could recommend for winter sowing in milk jugs or other containers? I am so sorry that I absolutely know nothing about winter sowing. I mean, I've never read about, there's just not but so much space in this head, y'all. And I have just never gone down that rabbit hole to investigate that. So I really can't. I would guess that if you're planting in containers, a regular container mix, so that means that it drains well and has a lot of air circulation, it wouldn't be blocking mix. Do you use Neptune liquid fertilizer to water seedlings after planting in the garden? That's a great question, Carla. Yes, we can actually run Neptune's harvest through our irrigation, and we do foliar feedings out in the garden using the same Neptunes. What you may figure out about me after you've hung out with me for a while is I try to be as streamlined and simple as possible. And when you're a new grower, you don't quite get that. And once you are up and running and totally consumed and never, ever, ever getting everything on your list done every day, you appreciate streamline. And that is what it's all about. So we use Neptune's Harvest in the grow room, in the irrigation, and for foliar feeding. And it works super. And I just do it according to the directions that are on the bottle. Cultivating the heart. Do you ever overwater when plants are in the soil blocks? And if not, why? Do you mean water from the top? Do you ever overwater when plants are in the soil blocks? And if not, why? Cultivating the heart, you need to ask that again. I'm not sure if you're asking me overhead watering. That would dissolve the blocks, would be the reason for that. So if that doesn't answer your question, ask it again, and I'll see if I can't help you. I'm hoping you can clarify for me, when do you put your soil block trays under lights? If a seed says it needs light to germinate, that just means light like room light. That is not grow light. If it says it needs light to germinate, do you put them under lights and heat match right away after sowing? No. And I will tell you that you will totally toast your blocks doing that. So when it says needs light to germinate, that is just regular day length room light. That is not a grow light. Or are there seeds you do not put on the heat mat? Thank you for everything. You're welcome. So no, pretty much everything goes through the heat mat. I tweak some things, which I've talked about from time to time, which I can't list right now because they don't even all come to mind. But everything that gets started indoors, and I will say with the exception of sunflowers, but sunflowers definitely benefit from a heat mat, but we just started so many sunflowers every week, we never had enough. So our grow room gets super hot, and that's where those would sit. So to answer your question, yes, everything pretty much goes on the seedling heat mat. Do you use silage tarps for you chop and drop, or if so, where do you source those? Do you use silage tarps for, I don't know what you chop and drop is, and I do use silage tarps. You can find them on our website. We sell the 20 by 50 foot piece, which is really easier to handle than some of the bigger ones. So I'm sorry, Sheila, I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know. It says chop and drop. Do you mean cover crop? And yes, sometimes I do use silage tarp to extinguish cover crop, but not all the time. Elizabeth, I planted 200 scabious and soul blocks last week. They have been on a heat mat set at 72. My air temp is 65. Only 25% have sprouted. Do I keep them on the heat mat or take them to the lights? So I don't know which scabby that is. I've been showing, I just germinated blue and Fata Morgan, and they did pretty well. So if you're saying your heat mat is set at 72, then that must mean you have a heat mat with an external thermostat. For a cool flower, I would turn that down. That is definitely too warm. And I would say if your room temperature is 65, I would go ahead and just move them over to keep those 25% from stretching. But for cool flowers, I would definitely have that thermostat turned down below 70 degrees for sure. When do you move 3/4 inch soil block tomatoes to 2-inch blocks? Great question, Kathleen. And I don't even know if I have my tomato seeds for this year. Kind of crazy. So when they're about 10 to 14 days old, when they're about this big, and you don't want them to have excess roots that you have to trim off before you can drop them in the 2-inch. So in a perfect world, 7 to 10 days, you want them to be up and growing and a healthy little transplant when you move them over. And they do absolutely beautiful. Where do I purchase Lizzianthus plugs? You need to, I think if you're a farmer, then you go to a plant broker. The plant broker that comes to mind is farmerbailey.com. He sells in smaller numbers. Germania Seed Company is another one, but those are minimums of 12 and 1,500 plants. So Farmer Bailey is probably a good start for that. Ashley, put out some seedlings for hardening off today. Yay! How many hours should they stay out today is today enough time if I'm hooping? So it's a lot of questions, Ashley. So let me answer them one at a time. So how many hours? So hardening off, for anybody that doesn't know what that is, means how you introduce seedlings that have been growing inside in a very protected situation, no wind, that kind of stuff, how you acclimate them to outdoors. And I will tell you that when I harden off, I typically move them outside and leave them, but that's because I have a protected spot, a carport with a wooden fence around it that blocks the wind. So I would put them out for the day, Ashley, and if the conditions, if it's not dropping below 30 at night, I would be leaving them out there. It just 100% depends on what your conditions are. And you have a good point. You can harden cool season, not warm season. You can harden cool season seedlings off after they're planted out in the garden when you use hoops and row covers, because you're creating that same protected environment. That doesn't work with warm because you'll overheat them. So you can move them out there if it's time and you have hoops and row covers to do that with. All right, for anybody joining us, remember, post your questions down in the bubble with the question mark at the bottom of the screen, and I'm working through the list here. How and when do you start to fertilize your seedlings? That's just a great question too. So every Monday, I add Neptune's Harvest seaweed fish to my watering can. It's a gallon watering can, and I put in what it says for 1 gallon, and everybody that gets water that day that's under grow lights gets watered with food. Heat mats do not get food. And then to follow that, on Wednesdays I add Natrol, which is the our prevention program to control fungus gnats. The Natrol I add to the watering can on Wednesdays, and no, you cannot add them both on the same day. On Wednesdays, and that kills any larvae that adult fungus gnats have laid in the soil. And then, of course, we always have the sticky traps there also. And so every Monday, everybody that's in the grow room or out on the carport hardening off gets food every Monday. Any tips for growing Craspedia for the first time? So, my Craspedia seedlings are just gorgeous. If you want to see what's growing in my grow room, tomorrow my Facebook Live at 11 a.m. over on my farm Facebook page. Oh my gosh. The straw flowers and the stock are gorgeous, and the Craspedia is beautiful. We start Craspedia, and it's a cool flower, so you can plant it up to 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost. We lost ours to winter kill this year, and so we're replanting them again. They definitely, if you can winter them over, it's worth a try if you're in zone 8 or 7B. We're right on the edge because you get super tall stems when you fall plant them in those zones. But last year we didn't lose them. This year we did, for who knows why. So we're replanting them again. Super easy to germinate. We had excellent germination in our soil blocks. So, Hemlock Flowers, hello, love tour book. I'm not sure what that is. I noticed that one of my Snapdragon flats, the seedling leaves are curling up, making a little cup. Other flats look great. Any idea what that might be? I do not, but what you should do is, if you're having, you chop one off at the soil and turn the leaves over and examine and look for pests. And if you can't figure it out, then the next best thing would be to send an image or connect with your local extension office and ask them whether they want to see a picture or have you bring it to them in a little bag. Is it nutrition? Is it watering? Is it a pest? I mean, there's just no way to tell, and nobody can tell until they really lay their eyes on it, perhaps. And that's what your local extension office, that's what I do. I don't have any clue what that could be. That's what I would do if that was my problem. I miss the eucalyptus seeds. Will you get more? Well, guess what? We just restocked them last night, so you need to hightail it over. So we have the Eucalyptus Silver Dollar is currently available. We are hoping that some others will be coming into stock here before too long, but you never know until they get here. So right now, Silver Dollar is available on our website, thegardenersworkshop.com. Can I use worm casting compost in the soil blocking recipe? Yes, works beautifully. The key is any compost, and what that means is that whatever makes up the compost or the product has gone through the composting stage. So worm castings are excellent to use in your recipe. Hey there from Kansas. I'm a new flower farmer and I'm late to the cool flower game. Is it still? So the rest of you probably maybe have something further down here. Let me just look. My goodness, we have a lot of questions today. So the bottom line is this: Sweet Bees Flowers. So I would guess 5B that your last spring frost date is probably sometime in May. And so the second window of opportunity for cool flowers is 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost. So yeah, you have time to get some stuff started and get it into the ground, I would guess. And so I would definitely go for it. Is there a benefit to growing cut flowers on raised beds as opposed to flat ground? Well, that is just a really great question, Melissa. We grow everything in raised beds. People are very confused oftentimes. They think that a raised bed has to have a structure around it. All of our beds on our farm are raised. We either do it with a shovel or our tractor makes them, but they have no sides. They don't have wooden sides, but they're lifted, 4 to 5 inches above ground level. And there is definitely benefits for raised beds. Let's see, the soil warms up sooner. If you have, it increases the drainage, which is a huge key to success, particularly with cool flowers. But also if you have a monsoon rain and it just lifts your roots up above the water table. So yeah, raised beds are definitely beneficial, and most of us do grow in raised beds. In zone 7B, what's the cutoff to plant eucalyptus out? So eucalyptus is a warm season, tender annual, but I'm not even going to go into it. It can be wintered over with great care. Ours is winter. We winter it over here with protection, meaning deep mulch, hoops, and covers. And we always get better production the second year. But that totally, you're right on the edge of that, Elizabeth. 7B, that's what I am. So with protection, you can winter it over. With that said, eucalyptus is really a slow grower. And so starting the seeds late in the season means that you're only going to get a harvest later in the year. There's definitely a benefit to starting earlier, but the bottom line for most of us is that seeds have not been available. So you start them when you can. So if you plant them where you can plan that you're going to mulch them deep in leaves come, November or October, whenever your first frost is, and then hoop and cover them, there is a very good chance that you can make them go for the next year. And that's the best time. Whenever we winter them over, we get earlier harvest, longer stems. So yeah, but eucalyptus is just definitely a slow grower all around. I've never had any luck with baby's breath. Any tips? So I don't know what having any luck, whether you mean germinating or growing it. We only grow the annual variety of baby's breath, which you'll find over on our website. It's called Covent, and it is an excellent germinator, and we fall planted it, and we're also very early spring planting it. It's a cool flower, so it needs to be planted into cool and cold conditions. And so we're going to compare what the stem length is like fall compared to very early spring. So you can check that out on our website. Covent, Covent is the variety that you can look for over there. The Dairy Barn Flower Farm. Do you have any resources for forcing bulbs other than amaryllis and paper whites? I'm looking into tulips, hyacinths. Thank you. So the Dairy Barn, we have a course taught by Dave Dowling, the king of bulbs. It's bulbs, perennials, woodies, and more. And, probably a third, if not more, of his course is all about bulbs, from forcing to programmed and all of that stuff. So that would be the only resource. I personally don't grow many bulbs. So Dave's course registration opens in June, and the class starts in July, and it runs for 6 weeks, and it runs right during that time when people are planning and ordering their bulbs for the next season and the season after that even. So that's why it's timed that way. So Dave's course, if there's anybody on here has taken Dave's course, let the Dairy Barn Flower Farm know. He's like the walking encyclopedia when it comes to that whole class of flowers. I was thinking there were a few cool weather flowers that could be succession planted even as the weather warms. Is that correct? So it's all relative to what weather warm means to you. Depends on what your spring and summer is like. We succession plant Bupleurum, Sweet William, and I'm experimenting with others right now to see how far we can push them. The problem is once it starts to warm up, the reaction that cool season hardy annuals have is they either fall victim to diseases and pest pressure takes them, or the stems get shorter and shorter and shorter. So that is really a very question that it would be very unique to your situation. You just don't know until you try it. And so if there's something you're thinking, Sweet William and Bupleurum are really great. Those are always in demand flowers. To plant small amounts of them once a month, for a couple, 3 months, and see how far it gets you. And you'll figure out which is worth the trouble, That's how we figure it out. How big do Snapdragon seedlings need to be before moving outdoors? So, my goal of all seedlings is 3 to 5 inches. That just gives them enough oomph to really hold their own, to get whether hardened off or planted out in the garden and hardened off out there. So that's the best. And also, are they a healthy little seedling? There's sometimes that, and I get them too, that seedlings that are just struggling. And those are the ones that you just have to figure out. Most often, overwatering oftentimes leads to that. Those may need to be a little bit bigger. So I'll take one last question here. I think maybe 2. Do you use the fertilizer at the full strength, or do you dilute the recipe that's on the bottle? Karen asks. No, I use the directions on the actual bottle. So if it says 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons, whatever it is, that is what I actually use it with. How long before last frost do you typically start seeing your first cool flower blooms? So that, again, 100% depends on when they were planted, where you are. For us, on our farm out in the field, I get bachelor buttons and poppies typically at the end of March or early April, and dill foliage, not actually dill flowers. But again, it all depends on when you planted them, how mature they are, how great they grew, and then what is your spring conditions. If you live in an area where it just stays pretty nippy through spring, it's going to be later. But if you're like us here, where we typically go from the cold of winter right into the heat of summer, that just brings them on really fast. So all of those things really affect that. Just got the eucalyptus seeds. Can I combine orders for saving on shipping? If you place the order all at once, yes. But unfortunately, once an order goes into our system, it is next to impossible to do that. So, sorry. I lost what I was looking at. we broke your web page. Yeah, so it was kind of crazy around here for a few days between, yeah. And it was a wonderful thing y'all did for us, and we appreciate it so very, very much, for real, although it was tough getting through it. All right, gang. Here's the rest of Sweet Bee's question. Kansas Zone 5B. I'm a new flower farmer and late to the cool flower game. Is it possible for me to grow bells of Ireland? And if so, when do I need to start them inside, or should I still try to direct them outside? So you would plant bells of Ireland in very early spring. And frankly, I've never had luck starting bells of Ireland indoors. However, I would say that treatment, like I talked about doing Ami, Daucus, and dill early on here in this live, about putting them on heat for a very short 24 to 36 hours, then just setting them off in the grow room somewhere in a cool spot with no heat. They just need room light. They shouldn't have a grow light on them. And just, you water the blocks or whatever you're starting them in as they need it. But they need cool conditions to germinate. And so that's a challenge. So you would definitely grow, plant them in the spring, and you'll just have to best figure that out. And maybe you can connect with another Kansas 5B grower and see how they ever do it. All right, friends. So that's it for today. Remember to join me over on Clubhouse. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, it's just another phone app, social media, but it's all audio. It's like us talking on the phone. You can come up on the stage and talk to me and ask a question. And today we have a special guest, Jonathan Lease of Springforth Farm. Jonathan and his wife, Megan, are doing what most flower farmers only dream of doing. They only sell spring and very early summer flowers, and they spend the rest of the summer growing vegetables and going on vacation and being with their family. They have tweaked their farm to their life instead of the other way around. And they have a great course, which you can check it out over on my website, thegardenersworkshop.com. It's called the No-Till Micro-Scale Flower Farm. And he does, once a year, he does a live Q&A with anybody that's for all of his students. And that's getting ready to come up, is why we're having him on today. So you want to get his course so you are on his list, and then you'll get a special private invitation to his Q&A. But today on Clubhouse, you can get a question to him. All right, friends, till we meet again. And remember, keep your eye on our new seed category, because we are constantly adding and bringing on new seeds. Wait till you see the gorgeous new celosias that are over there. They're there right now. Ciao.